that
There
should...
we go.
Yay!
And here's this one. Oh my goodness, we totally did not plan this.
But... Girl, you were reading my mind. Let me go over and share on Facebook. So go ahead, start chatting. Let me just go share this.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to get this going today because this is the topic.
Girl, that isn't the understatement of the century. This is the topic that nobody gets to skip over or avoid, unfortunately. But fortunately, we are here to help you with it. So just give me 1 second, make sure that this is going live.
Yep, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to pull it up so that I can share it as well because this is something everybody needs to connect into.
Yeah. So everybody who showed up just a couple minutes early, well done for being here on time. Good job. I think.
Ooh, I see ya.
I think we're good.
Hooray. Okay, so let me share. Oops, I think I hit the wrong button, but that does not matter. Good times. So this is what happens when you try to do two things at one time. Very important to do focused ability to work. But if you're here and you're early, what we're doing is we're actually going to invite in a few extra people to come join us because this is a really important topic. We are talking all about day 3, and this is...
I know, drum roll, all about imposter syndrome.
And AKA how... Oh, no, it's not that title. I'm trying to skip to day 5. I get excited. I want to go all the way there. But let's talk today about imposter syndrome, what it means. We'll do a little recap about what we've been talking about. But this is the space to show up, to really connect into focused shifts within your mindset, to have the leaps that you desire forward in your business. And I think it's really important to say, I love that word focused, because what we're talking about, it's simple. It's not hard. It may not be easy, but we are not here trying to do 27 days of journaling in your notebook and meditating or lifting heavy boulders. Let's just think some thoughts and move to our next steps that we want to take in our life.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I love about doing 5-day series and 5-day challenges is it's just small but profound shifts every day that when you layer them in the end, they have the power to change your entire perspective. So one of the big reasons we are here doing this is to make things easier for you. And today is about self-sabotage and one of the ways that we all bump up against the impulse to sabotage ourselves. So we're going to dive right in. But before we get to content, let's just do a quick re-intro in case this is the first time you're joining us. Welcome, welcome. Today is day 3 of a 5-day series called Get Your Head Straight. And it is all about doing the mindset work. And you know what, Laura, I don't even really like to use the word work because when you do it right, it doesn't really feel like work. So yeah, some of the emotions come up and that can feel like a little bit messy or whatever. But the whole point of this is it's for it not to feel like work. So everything else in your business feels a lot more fun and flowy. But anyway, this is our 5-day series where we're focusing really on the mindset shifts that you can create and a little bit of stuff you can do behind the scenes so that you have really a solid foundation for creating the next leap inside your business, regardless of where you are and what you want that leap to be. This applies to pretty much everybody across the board. My name is Kelly Ruda. I am a transformational mindset coach and mentor. I'm a former psychotherapist of more years than I would like to admit to having under my belt. And I work with female entrepreneurs who really have the absolute audacity to go out in the world and say, I am going to change this world for the better with the gifts that I have been given. And I'm excited to receive abundance in exchange for sharing my gifts with the world. And I am here with one of my favorite gals, Laura Wright. So go ahead, introduce your fabulous self.
Thank you, Kelly. So so I have a little 7-year-old and we will profoundly profess all of our love and he'll just say, same. But that's what I want to say about what Kelly said. So my role and my way and my being in the world is all about sales. I love supporting empowered, driven female entrepreneurs to make a lot of money and to do it with ease. One of the things I love hearing from my clients is, Laura, you just made that sound so simple, which again is what aligns Kelly and I so well, especially at the beginning, is it is supposed to be simple. Like, we are supposed to be in joy and flow, and we are supposed to make money, and it doesn't have to be hard or hassly or drama filled. And what we're going to do in these 5 days, and we're in day 3, and so keep staying with us for the next 2 days, and well, today as well, and go back and listen to the other ones if you like, is the concept of getting your head straight is really about straightening your focus. That's what we're talking about. We're helping you have tools that you can use inside of your business today, tomorrow, any day, that helps you get laser focus again on what you desire, because when we have big desires, they require us to keep focused attention on them. We talked a little bit about, I like to call it the dip. It's when everything's going okay, and then our little chatter kicks up and we dip down. Mm-hmm. What Kelly and I want to give you is all the tools that you need to keep yourself in a space where when the dip happens, you can get right back up. And that's what these tools are. So I think today's so important because it is about self-sabotage, and those little dips usually don't come from outside sources. They usually come from within. But Kelly, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what we mean when we're saying imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the most common conversations that I have with women, regardless of income level, by the way, whether they're leaving a 9-to-5 and diving into owning their own business, or they're at 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, or everywhere in between, whenever it's time for you to stretch out of your comfort zone, you're going to hear some version of this thought, this chatter in your head. Well, who the hell do you think you are to go and do that, to go and ask for that, to think you can have that or be that or claim that space? Who the hell do you think you are? Mm-hmm. And look, everybody's got their own version of how that shows up. For some of you, it may show up in a little more of a vanilla way. The way it shows up for me is very in this very fierce, sort of firm, questioning way. But it's really the inner chatter that tries to get you to just stay in that comfort zone, wherever that comfort zone may be, and not stretch outside of it. So it's the, oh my gosh, I'm going to get found out. I am not this expert. I am not this amazing. Who am I to charge this much? Who am I to put myself out there in this way and say that I am really capable of helping you and supporting you and transforming you and getting these big results? And so what happens is, your mind just goes off and running when you go to stretch outside of where you currently are. And this is never going to stop you guys. Laura, I'm guarantee you're going to have a story. Actually, we spoke earlier today, so I know you have a story
about this.
but what I want to validate for everybody who's here is that, this is something that never stops, because you will continue to be called to expand, to rise, to evolve inside your business and everywhere else in life, by the way. And so every time you go to stretch out of that new level that you got nice and comfy at, the phrase you hear quite often is new level, new devil. Well, it's not about the devil. It's about your mind trying to kind of keep you neat and cozy and in this very nice little box. Yes. But we don't thrive in the box. So I know, Laura, you have a story that coincides with the fact that this happens at every income level.
Every income level. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of people that I've worked with online and I currently work with who it's not well known that I work with them, because people usually come to me when something's not working right. So I want to tap into everyone out there who's like, well, maybe you do feel confident. Maybe you really do feel like you're awesome and you're an expert. But here's what I've seen in a lot of folks who really go to the stretch space. When there is a misalignment or something off and they stretch and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And this is usually where people come and find me. We figure out what happened and we change it. But what I know is that that's when something kicks up, when the outside doesn't match the inside. Mm-hmm. And I want you to know this happens to people who are just starting. I hear this a lot when you're beginning. It's wait a minute, I don't have 20 years of experience like you do, Laura. I don't have 50 happy clients. I don't have this. So who am I to do this? Yes. And then the flip side of that is the person who might have had 20 years of experience and 50 happy clients, and something that they do doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, we start to think, who am I to do this? So I want you to know that this happens. I hear from people, even people who have multi-7-figure businesses, who have gone out there, done something in the world, and the confidence shake that happens when it doesn't work. Because P.S., here's the rule. Everything we're doing is testing. I think people get into this mode where we think that with business, it's always going to be, I put something out, it always works. Well, guess what? It doesn't always work. It doesn't mean you don't get to your income goal, because please let me know this. Or let me share this. I hit my income goals because I expect for a handful of things not to work. And so I always have 2 handfuls worth of things that I'm doing.
Yes.
But if you've ever had that experience where you had things going well, and now they currently aren't going at that level, it's really easy for this little chatter, that imposter syndrome, to step up and say, wait, but I didn't do it this well. Yeah. So I really want to say that there's one more, and then Kelly, I'll let you run right through, is the thing that I always like to say to folks who have been doing it for somebody else, but they haven't been doing it in their own business. Because this comes up for
big one
all the time. So here's what I always like to give the Don Draper example. So we all watched Mad Men at some point. So here's Don Draper. He is an employee inside of a company. And somebody would come to work with him and they wouldn't look at him and say, oh, wait, you don't advertise for your Don Draper business and it's not your business and you haven't done this. They're going to look at his expertise inside of what he does and they're going to want to hire him. So what I want you to understand is you, if you were an employee, you had the full capability, expertise, and ability to do something for someone, even if you didn't have the business that represents it. There's a lot out there that's taught where you have to have done it in order to teach it. And I agree at one level, but the where I don't agree is this. If you are teaching somebody how to do something and you have helped many, many people do it, if that is your craft, that is your expertise, it doesn't mean that you have to be able to do it. For example, book publishers probably have never published their own book, right?
Yes.
Right. They are probably fantastic, best book publishers in the world, but they've never written and published their own book because that's not their need. So you can look at the craft and what you do. And if you are not teaching someone to do follow me model, then you can teach your thing no matter where you are inside of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I had this just come up with a client of mine who's been in corporate forever and a day, very, very successful. But on the side, she has been doing health and wellness coaching for friends and family and has been very immersed in the health and wellness industry for 20 years. And it's just now that she's monetizing that. And she's really bumping up against this. And when I asked her, why are you acting as if you have not done this before? Just because you put your name on the front of the business doesn't mean anything you've been doing is any different. And she said to me, and this is the comment I get the most from people, I never thought about it that way. That is the whole point of doing mindset work, because when you shift the way you perceive things, then what also shifts in accordance is how you feel, and then the decisions you make, the action you get into, and your awareness of choosing aligned actions. And you've heard us talk about this all week, and we will continue to be talking about this. The problem is, if you bump up against what I term or call imposter syndrome, it's self-doubt. It's fear of, being seen as or being a fraud or being incapable. And you don't learn how to sort of manage what comes up for you, what happens? The overwhelm sets in, the shutdown happens, you hide, you underprice, you stop selling, you stop marketing, you stop promoting, you stop putting yourself out there and being visible. Or you go all the way in the other direction. And I've seen this where people are just rapid fire throwing things all over up against the wall and hoping something sticks without checking to make sure it's in alignment or being on purpose. So a big part of today is really just us talking about how you manage that chatter when it comes up, and it's going to come up, because Laura and I have both had 7-figure clients who will still say, I don't know if I can do this in terms of going to whatever the next level is. And by next level, I want to point out, doesn't always, it's not always about income, you guys.
Thank you. I wanted to jump in. Sometimes the thing that the high 7-figure earner needs to do is actually work less.
Work less, or some of them will say, I'm ready to go do something completely different, or I'm ready to add a totally different arm to my business, or I'm ready to just shake up how I do this CEO thing. So it's not just about constantly upping the numbers, you guys. Not everybody is interested in that all the time, and that's fine. And I just want to validate for you, this is about whatever the stretch is for you. So let's talk really quickly about how you can begin to handle all of that self-doubt that comes up.
And actually, even before we dive in with the tool, I want to say that it can come up in different places. I'll give you guys a little example. So I'm about to start a book project, which is really awesome. And I picked this up and put this down and picked this up and put this down and picked it up and put it down. I finally, this time I picked it up with both hands. And while I was feeling really excited and confident talking with everyone who's on my team with what we're going to do, a funny little thing happened when I went for Mother's Day brunch when my husband mentioned the book to my in-laws and they were like, oh my God, this is so big. And I went, oh no, it's not that big of a deal. So I want for you guys to watch when we attempt to pull back or dim a light. Sometimes what's happening is that is just a little tick inside that helps that imposter syndrome grow. Good news is I saw it, felt it, acknowledged it, and I can now shift out of it. But these are the tools that Kelly's about to give you, is the how to see, acknowledge, and shift. So
yes. So that actually perfectly and beautifully illustrates the very first sort of tip, which is all shifts come from a place of self-awareness. And so it really behooves you and your business to become incredibly self-aware of that chatter because it's there. I guarantee you it's there. Now, it may not come up with the personality that it does for me or how it shows up for Laura, but it is absolutely showing up for you. And just understand really clearly what this chatter is. This was profound for me to figure out at 21 years old. I had a psychology professor who was talking about, personality structure and going on and on and on. And she said this, that critical voice that you hear inside of your head that comes up when you're, trying to go forward in life, understand that is not your voice. And I can remember sitting in class and it was like the heavens had opened up, because what she was teaching us was that is the voice of your ego. It is not the voice of you and who you are. So the minute you recognize that chatter is not the voice of your inner being, it is not the voice of the deep, wise you, it is the voice of your ego. Well, the second I recognized that, I was like, oh, game on. Because really what that means is if that's not the voice of who I truly am, then I don't really have to listen to it. And I get to be the boss. So that flipped a switch for me. And I got really, really excited because that voice, that highly kind of critical chatter in my head drove a lot of things in my life. Anything from depression, anxiety to an eating disorder, lots of dysfunctional things. So even if you can't relate to that, I know you can relate to that chatter in your head trying to talk you out of maybe marketing differently, maybe increasing your prices, maybe getting on and being seen and on social media. But regardless, what you need to understand and be aware of is that's not really you. That's the voice of a part of you that thinks if it keeps you playing small, that it keeps you safe. And it's just not the truth.
Yeah, so, and you have to,
No, you're good.
So you have to remember what safe actually means. Safe is staying the same, but here's the thing. You can't actually stay the same. Like we are biological entities inside this world. You either, I don't want to be flippant, but you grow or you die, but there really is no in between. So this concept of why, this is why when you look around, you see people who stay miserable. Why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense because that's not safe. It's not feeling good. What it is familiarity. The ego understands a familiar pattern and it knows if I do A plus B, I will get C.
Right.
Even if C is the worst thing in the whole wide world, it knows it. Yes. So it's going to stay with what it knows. So this is that moment to say, oh, I get it. And again, you can kind of observe the voice when you decide that it is not truly yours. This also helps when you're making decisions. So how do you know, if you're in a sales conversation, should I buy or should I not? How do you know? Well, is it a critical voice or is it your inner wisdom?
Yeah, so that is again, beautiful segue, because that's tip number 2. So from a place of self-awareness, what you get to do is take back your personal power. Too many people are reactive in business. That didn't work. I guess that means I wasn't supposed to do it, or I guess that means I suck, or I guess that means I have to lower my prices, or I guess that means blah, 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 blah. Too many of us are acting in a reactive way instead of a responsive way, which is far more empowered. So from a place of self-awareness, all you have to do is make one shift. And that shift is from being engaged with that chatter in your head to being the observer of the chatter in your head. So what I like to tell people is the ego, and if you have ever been around a toddler, whether you have a child or a niece or nephew or your best friend has a kid, you'll get this reference. The ego is a lot like a toddler. It throws tantrums and to try to get your attention and to try to manipulate you into doing certain things. So I was just telling a story this morning to a group I run that when my oldest son was 3, and he was going through kind of like that, that phase where he wanted what he wanted when he wanted it. And one morning it happened to be cookies at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and we were not having that for breakfast. So he threw himself on the kitchen floor, which happened to be cement tile, and just screaming and yelling and started whacking his head to try to get a response from me. Now, of course, one side of me was like, oh my God, that's awful. The other side of me saw it very clearly for what it was, and that I had a decision. Either I am going to give this behavior attention and affirm it, or I am going to step away and teach him that this is not how you get mommy's attention or get what you want. So I said to him, I see that you're upset. I see that you want something, but this is not how it works. And when you're done having a fit, come get mommy in the living room. So I walked out, and of course I'm panicking in the living room that there's gray matter in my kitchen floor. But I knew I stayed firm, and within, I don't know, maybe 45 seconds, he calmed down, and I heard him, he got up off the floor, walked in the living room, looked at me, he goes, "I ready." And that is my story about how to deal with the ego, because you're either going to give into the ego when it starts throwing all the stuff at you that scares you, makes you anxious and feel overwhelmed, or you're going to train yourself to just observe and acknowledge what's coming up and make a decision from a different place. That is real, true empowerment. And by the way, and Laura, I know you feel this way too. I don't want to speak for you, but I do know this is true. Acknowledge whatever feelings come up. You're allowed to be scared, you guys. Please do not buy into all of this marketing around having to be fearless all the time. It's nonsense. I'm scared all the time. Every time I do something new or try something else, I'm scared. You don't need to be fearless to be confident and successful. As a matter of fact, your confidence grows from being afraid and choosing courage.
Bingo. You literally took the words out of my mouth. This is something to think about, is that if you try to ignore the ego and willpower past it, it would be like the same thing with your kiddo. And P.S., my 7-year-old literally did that this morning. I mean, I'm throwing himself on the floor, but we had an upset because we didn't have chocolate chip pancakes.
See? Yes.
It doesn't ever stop. But if I had just turned away and walked away from him, I couldn't have gotten the result I needed. You do need to acknowledge first and choose something different. And I want you guys also to hear how fast that happened for both Kelly and I. Is this morning, the little issue with what are we having for breakfast? We have it most mornings. This morning went pretty quickly. It doesn't have to be hard. Same thing with inner critic. This isn't you have to sit and think forever. This can be a moment. And I love what you were saying about self-awareness. This is something that's really important to both of us. I use Kolbe assessment and human design inside of my business and strength finders. I love those 3 because they are non-changing assessments. So it's not like if you take a have a good day, it's different than a bad day.
I use them too. Yep.
Exactly the same things. And what happens is when you are self-aware, you can align and make choices that are good for you, and you can work better with your people. So same thing. If you're not self-aware, you don't know if this is critic or if this is your gut. So anything you can do to help understand who you are and how you behave currently lets you know what you can choose to change.
I love how you and I just kind of like riff off of each other. Like, you guys need to understand this is not all pre-planned. Laura and I work really well just sort of riffing off of each other. And I love that you're bringing up, and I'm like, oh, that's the perfect segue to the thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, P.S. We did not script or plan this. We kind of decided, like, it's been things we've been talking about for a long time, but we just sat down and said, this is a topic, and we're going to show up and talk about the topic.
Yep, exactly. Which brings me to how in that moment, when I'm feeling scared or overwhelmed or anxious, or really that self-doubt is kind of creeping in there, how do I know? This is a question I get all the time. How do I know if what I'm hearing is coming from my ego or I'm getting a message from my inner being? And it's really, I love stupid simple, you guys. I'm like a big fan of making things as simple and easy as possible. So here's one question you can ask yourself in the moment, anytime you're triggered around, the inner critic or the imposter syndrome, that's going to make it crystal clear for you. Would my inner being, who's connected to the divine, to the universe, to all that is, who wants the very best for me, would my inner being ever say these things to me? You're not good enough. You can't do it. It's impossible. You're going to fail. You're going to make an ass out of yourself. People are going to laugh at you. But would your inner critic ever be sending you that message? Or is it far more likely that that's the ego just trying to get you to stay safe and play small? It thinks it's safe. Stay small is really what it is. Mm-hmm. From that place of going, oh, that's right. My ego is the one who's got a vested interest in me kind of hanging out in this comfort zone. That's what allows you to do what's really important at the end of this, which is get into aligned action. Mm-hmm. Because look, we can sit on our yoga mats or our meditation mats all day long and create self-awareness. But if you don't get off the mat and into action, nothing is going to come to fruition.
Yeah, I love that. And the same kind of question, I had a coach ask me this years back, and I was just in one of those patterns where we're uncovering some stuff and things were happening. And she was like, would you say these things to your son? And it like caught me for a minute, because the way that we sometimes speak to ourselves, and again, it's that inner critic. Mm-hmm. If you have a child, or if you've got a niece or a nephew, or even a puppy, you wouldn't yell at them. You wouldn't say these things. So if you wouldn't say it to them, you shouldn't say it to yourself. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your inner being is always compassionate and loving. It's not going to try to guide you that way. So we've got to ask really much better, higher quality questions to ourselves. So in a moment of decision, you may ask yourself something like, does this serve me well? Mm-hmm. Does this serve my clients well? Not, is it impossible? Am I going to fall flat on my face? I'm going to make an ass out of myself. No. Does this serve me well? And that helps you to kind of, tap into your inner being. But what I try to say to people to keep you out of overwhelm when all of this is going on, because, and Laura, I know you hear this too. I just don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. I don't know how. Mm-hmm. And really, the way to get out of the sort of the cycle or the spiral is just do the best next thing.
Yes. Okay.
You don't have to have the entire thing mapped out. And I don't know about any of you, but I map things out and they rarely end up going that way anyway. Mm-hmm. Maybe the first couple of things, they happen that way, but the rest of it usually unfolds totally differently than I plan anyway. So if you can just bring your focus in the moment to what is the best next thing for me to do, you will, and make that a habit, you will be absolutely amazed at how the path, the strategy, the system, the resources, the ideas all begin to unfold for you because of how you managed your inner self.
Yes. And really the just one step. It's the Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, you don't need to the whole staircase, right?
Yes, I will. I'm like, I destroy quotes, but
it's one of my favorites. Yeah, you just
need to take that first step. And really it's true, because I think we get into all or nothing modes. Yeah. This is a very common pattern within overwhelm. And this is a mode of self-sabotage, is all or nothing. And so what's really wonderful, again, too, same thing. I map out my year. and then I kind of set it down and relax. And then I go through and I start doing what I planned. And usually what happens is by the second month, I am often doing totally different things. And then I look at my plan again and I think, oh, I don't really want to do that. Or yes, I do. And then I keep going. And at the end of the year, I 90% of the time get to what I wanted to get to, but it never looks like what I planned.
Right.
But if I hadn't had that plan, you got to think your plan is your first step.
Right.
It is point you in the direction. Again, this is why it's get your head straight. It's point in the straight direction that you want to go. Take that one step, because the first time you take that step, you get to see what's in front of you for the next step and the next step and the next step.
And there always is one, by the way. I think we have this fear like, well, if I don't know all of them, then I'm just going to get stuck and I'm not going to know what to do, or I'm going to always do the wrong thing. Or the truth of it is, if you just check in with yourself every step of the way and you make sure you're really well held along the way. In other words, you're well supported, you're grounded, you're really in a space that's positive and uplifting. It always reveals itself to you. Now, that doesn't mean everything turns out the way you think it will, but it doesn't mean that things don't turn out the way that really serves you the best, even if it looks like the dreaded mistake.
Yeah, which don't actually.
My very first launch in business failed miserably. I lost $10,000. I didn't make $1, lost $10,000. And it was one of the greatest gifts ever given to me in business, because the clarity that came from that allowed me to turn back around, make that money back, and just leap into making, much greater sums of money, but in a different way, in an aligned way, in a way that felt good and easy and smooth and supported. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't always turn out the way we kind of imagine it in our minds, but that doesn't mean it's not turning out the way that's best for you.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And I want to kind of tie back to what we talked to yesterday a little bit and the day before is we were talking about boundaries yesterday and like removing people who are non-aligned from our world, or to have that. Same thing happens with inner critic. When you step into groups or circles that are fully supported, it kind of balances out your inner critic. I'm sure there's a proper statistic here, but it's something like, as kids or even as parents, we say the word no like 27 times and we say the word yes once. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do is create scenarios where I have 20 people around me saying, or however many, yes, you can do it, you can do it. So that when that one inner critic voice inside of me speaks, it doesn't get a chance to be as loud as it could be. So this is really a moment to take what we talked about with the boundary setting and blend it together with the self-sabotage, and let yourself be around other people who can help you balance your inner critic. So when you have way more people putting to you, and again, I'm not talking about like yes men, I'm talking about like conscious coaches, aligned mastermind members who, when you say you're going to do something, they actually know you can do it. You can borrow their belief for yourself, which will start to silence that inner critic.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like to say about the ego in general and the inner critic is that don't look to get rid of it, you guys. We don't have to like beat up on that side of ourselves. It's there for a reason. And believe me, there have been times in your life when your ego served you very, very, very well, especially if you've ever experienced dysfunction or trauma or anything. Your ego did you a solid, believe me. But it's now time to kind of shift that power differential. So the ego is no longer allowed to drive. It can go in the back seat and buckle up and have something to say once in a while, but no longer driving the bus of business or life. Okay. And so when you shift that, it allows you to then go, oh, I'm in charge of this. I get to make the decisions. Mm-hmm. But like Laura said, one of the most, and this is just kind of like a closing tip for you, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself are ways to ground back into what you know the truth is. And we started this on day one. What are your clear, deep desires? So make sure you have people around you that help you ground into that truth, that mirror that back to you, that validate that, sometimes actually help kind of kick your ass a little bit in a loving, kind of compassionate, respectful way.
We create those containers.
yes, absolutely. And don't forget to be that person for yourself. So even anytime I do a coaching call with somebody, that call is started with the same question every time, even if we work for years together, which is, what are we celebrating today? Mm-hmm. So make a ritual and this is about focus too, everybody. Make a ritual of celebrating your wins all the time, and the size does not matter. But our brains and our minds are really wired to look for the problems and the places where things are broken. We're wired that way. So we have to practice ritual of, I kicked ass on that. That was great. That worked out better than I thought. Holy cow, that showed up just in time. I wasn't even expecting it. Celebrating everything that shows up so that you balance the fact that your brain is always on the lookout for what to be afraid of or what needs to be fixed.
So simpatico, the way I said all of mine are, what's going well, what are you working on, and where do you need support? And again, it's the what's going well first, because here's what's really fun about mindset stuff, and then we'll make sure we send you guys off into your day, is that when you just start from a place of, I want to use the word positivity, but what I really mean is, again, celebration, what's going well, then when you start from there, you are actually making choices that support you. When we have to go clean up and deal with the crap, we actually reinforce it. Now, again, it's not that you're not going to address it. It's that when you just start from this space, you're actually starting at a higher ground, and it makes it much easier for you to keep going. So the critic doesn't get as much airtime.
Yeah. So we're going to continue this conversation about the inner critic tomorrow, because it's a big conversation. But today, just to kind of wrap it up, understand that one of the biggest ways you sabotage yourself, and be very clear, we are our own biggest obstacles. I don't care how many annoying people are showing up in your life. The biggest bottleneck is always us. And one of the biggest ways we sabotage ourselves is by listening far too much to that voice that's saying, you are a fraud, you are an imposter, this is not possible, all of that. So we started you off with some tips today. We're going to take the conversation even just a little bit deeper tomorrow in terms of the inner critic and ways that you can really sort of, the word that comes to mind is shield yourself from the inner critic, so that your new normal is, yeah, it pops up sometimes, or yeah, it pops up when I go to make a leap or a stretch, but I have so many things in place that support me that it kind of rolls off. It kind of rolls off. And here's the other thing I'm going to bring up tomorrow, which is when you get to that place, your inner critic actually can show up as a teacher for you that you can glean things from, instead of it being an annoyance you have to sort of handle all the time. Yes. So please, if you haven't watched the first 2 days, go back and make sure you do. We covered deep desires. We covered setting limits and boundaries. If you're catching this on the replay today, I'm so glad that you made the time to join us. And make sure you join us for the next 2 days, where we're going to continue to talk about the inner critic. And then on day 5, we're going to talk about claiming, owning, and embodying, I love that word, who you are, so that you can make your launches, your leaps, your next steps wildly successful.
I can't wait.
Me too. So we're sending you off into the rest of your day with love, and we can't wait to see you here, same place, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, tomorrow, Thursday.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.